Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to our guests today. Could I just go back to that point that was just raised a few moments ago with respect to the powers of Gardaí? I think in your submissions, the main tenet of them that comes across is that we have robust constitutional oversight, albeit some of the recommendations were probably not well understood early on. But with respect to the issue of house parties, it occupied a good bit of time, I think, in national media yesterday, particularly in college towns and cities, where obviously we can't blame kids for congregating and all of that. But if you accept the rationale that you have allowed emergency powers to be implemented on public health grounds, what is your reticence then in terms of having a legal requirement given to the guards to be able to go in and to disrupt these parties and obviously try and stop the transmission of disease?
Briefly speak to that, maybe answer the previous query as well. That I think with something like this, and it's important again to say the most recent regulations do not provide for a power of entry. They make it clear that it is under the regulations not lawful to organise a gathering, but there is no criminal sanction attached. It's not a penal provision described at some quarters as a civil offence, but it's been pointed out that that's not something really known to our law. But in terms of considering that and whether or not it's allowed, I think as the Law Society has said, there is very serious concerns in terms of the constitutional protection of the dwelling. But as we've talked about a lot, proportionality today, the key thing about proportionality is that context is key. And so if a very, very severe public health need could be shown, something might be proportionate when it might not be if that evidence cannot be presented. So that's why it's very difficult to speak in very general terms about this. It really depends on the evidence that could be presented for such an extraordinary power being necessary. And I think what we can say is there is certainly a credible constitutional objection to such a power of entry. Not that it is certainly or definitely unconstitutional. And I think it's important to say that it is for these houses in debate to work out whether or not they believe that evidence and that threat is sufficient if that comes forward as a proposal. But I think this also goes to the fact that we've been saying repeatedly, a need for oversight of regulations, because perhaps it is essential that the primary legislation allows for some very broad regulations which could even include making a civil offence of this establishment of dwellings. But we would need primary legislation to create a search power, and then there would be Oireachtas oversight. But we need that Oireachtas oversight of these regulations as well, because they're very, very significant, and some of the most significant rulemaking in this pandemic has been done by regulation. So it's very important that that oversight is there.
Thank you. Just in relation, I agree with Deputy Barrett in terms of the comments about direct provision centres, but can I ask, as be it the Law Society or any of the other legal people that are represented in committee today, have you looked at trying to short-circuit the asylum process? Because one of the problems that we have is, as you know, we have a number of people in the country, long stay, trying to have their status recognised, and that is leading to the increase in numbers, obviously the increase in applications and the increase in numbers.
Everyone's pointing the finger over at me here. Unfortunately, that's not a matter for the Bar Council or for the Bar of Ireland. As I've said, it's up to the executive, it's up to the legislature, and then you have the final check, which is by the courts. So in respect of that system and how it operates, if there is a fundamental breach of a person's rights in respect of the operation of that system, then either the legislature during the course of its debates in the two houses here has the power and the authority and the ability to address it, and then the outside check is through the courts, through a challenge, a judicial review of that. But from the Council of the Bar of Ireland, we don't have any input into that. So perhaps the Law Society or Trinity, who have been carrying out the overview, may have an observation in respect thereof.
To say that it obviously is within the power of the Oireachtas in legislating on a matter like asylum, whether or not the Houses believe there is an extraordinary need to exploit applications, set up a different system, or even sort of create some sort of blanket rule granting people a particular leave to remain or other status because of the exigencies of the pandemic. Those are powers that the Houses have, and I think something that is worth considering in light of the problems that have emerged, but it would be entirely for the Oireachtas to determine if that's something that's worthwhile.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yep.